What's going on, fellow A-Plusers? It is I, your host, Adam Perez, back once again with another Ultraman Trigger review for you guys today, as we're going to be getting into episode number 11, ladies and gentlemen. We are right there at the sort of midway finale for this season. I think episode number 12 next week is going to be a pretty big culmination, if you will. Again, can't quite remember in regards to if they're going to take a little bit of a hiatus. I think somebody in the comments last week mentioned that they might do like a recap sort of clip show after sort of the mid finale, if you will. So we'll see how that winds up playing out here when it comes to Ultraman Trigger. I don't know if they would really consider that an episode or a special or whatever the case may be, but we'll see as we get there, guys. But when it comes to episode number 11, hot damn, guys, this is an excellent episode. I'm actually debating whether or not this is my favorite episode of the season. I mean, we've had some bangers this season for sure, but it's definitely up there. I mean, especially as the story continues to unfold. The debut here of Trigger Dark or Dark Trigger. Love the suits, absolutely love it. I love the direction in which the story is certainly taking here. And, you know, to me, the fact that alone, though, I think we start off this episode with a battle of the heavyweights. I mean, Karmara versus Ultraman Trigger. I mean, that's a main event ticket, a main event fight on any ticket, any time of the day. So the fact that we are thrusted into the fight to just go ahead and kick off this episode, I think we immediately get the idea of what the tone, what the pacing of the episode is certainly going to be. And it didn't let up, whether that be action, whether that be storyline elements, punching you in the face with some reveals and things like that. Absolutely love the way that this episode starts off. And it feels very much like we're kind of stuck in the middle of a time loop, if you will. I mean, just the opportunity here to see Kengo utilizing his abilities to kind of break this dark spell, almost kind of thrusting him into the past, if you will, 30 million years ago, from really pretty much our first encounters with the Giants of Darkness that we come to see on the stone tablets and things like that all those years prior. So to be able to see Kengo thrusted into that position, even handed the spark lens from Yuzari, which is the same spark lens that, if you recall, is the one that I believe that Shizuma winds up revealing to us in the very first couple of episodes of this series, or at least like the relic that was at least sort of found. So the fact that Yuzari hands it to him, and we see him, you know, rushing into the Eternity Core, which, mind you, a very familiar shot of seeing Kengo lift up his spark lens in front of Ultraman Trigger in front of the Eternity Core. Very reminiscent of like episode 1 when Kengo winds up connecting with Ultraman. His very first vision that he winds up seeing is somebody holding up a spark lens in front of the Eternity Core, a la without Trigger Dark standing in front of him, but a very almost shot for shot sort of sequence from this episode to episode number 1. So it almost feels like Kengo was thrusted into the past to cause the events in the past that would eventually have ramifications to current times to lead up to this particular moment for Kengo. Again, very time loopish, it feels like. But since I'm a huge devourer of sci-fi and fantasy storytelling, this is like right up my alley in regards to the type of stuff that I absolutely love exploring. So maybe we'll get ourselves further information in the following episode, and maybe you guys can kind of fill in some of the blanks as we go along here in this episode and truly break down this episode. So things are coming full circle, it definitely feels like. So let's go ahead and dive into this, guys. First and foremost, I got to talk a little bit about Karmara, considering that we open up that episode with her attempting to sort of awaken her former love, it feels like. Just hearing the way that Karmara is talking to Ultraman Trigger, was not expecting that. I'm trying to think to myself in the past couple of episodes if she's hinted with referring to him a certain way, or the way that she talks, right? Like, I felt very much like there was a vendetta, a bone that she certainly has to pick with Ultraman Trigger. But I guess for me, it never really clicked that there might be more involved when it comes to their storyline. But clearly they've been lovers. I mean, you get the opportunity to see just from the flashback sequences of Kengo going back 30 million years, how Karmara talks to Ultraman Trigger or Trigger Dark or whatever the case may be. And that carries over into this episode as she's trying to draw Ultraman Trigger or Trigger Dark out of him. Even starts suggesting like throwing out complimenting him and stuff, saying that he used to be proud, beautiful, passionate, used to even refer to him as lover and things like that. So I find that all rather intriguing. Like, that was, if anything, I always thought maybe it was Dargon and maybe Yuzari that certainly had some sort of past, if you will, together. That clearly wasn't explored in this episode, but another loving relationship winds up blossoming that I had no idea was there in the first place. But she is attempting to try and bring back her lover, wanting to go ahead and utilize a dark curse to put on him in an attempt to go ahead and draw him free. And rather successful, if you ask me. A brilliant plan. It's almost one of those things where I think Carmeara, putting him under that dark curse, almost knew what Kengo was going to do in regards to maybe expelling all of his light energy to escape the grasp of the dark energy. And unfortunately, that doesn't necessarily happen. If anything, it does thrust Kengo back into the past, but it does leave our current Ultraman Trigger pretty much bodiless until we wind up seeing Trigger Dark actually awaken in here. And I mean, talk about just being absolutely frightening. Shout out to whoever the musical composer was for this episode by doing an amazing job of really carrying the emotions with some of its the musical score that we got in here. But talk about just devastating to see your hero and Ultraman Trigger collapsing, especially when it's a very close friend of yours, as we get to see just the emotional side that Akito is dealing with that struggle of knowing something's wrong with Trigger, therefore something absolutely has to be wrong with Kengo. And so to kind of see that sort of dread, that sort of fear of certainly what's to come, or at least what's about to awaken when it comes to Ultraman Trigger, I thought it was incredible here in this episode. But clearly, her passion is to get the Eternity Core. She mentions the idea that she wants to recreate the universe so that her Darkness clan can kind of rule over everything. And that's really the secret to the power of the Eternity Core, just how powerful it truly is. I think Yuzari in here references that it's powerful enough to create a Big Bang. In other words, recreating the universe sort of as we know it to whoever has that sort of ability. So we get to see exactly clearly what the Giants of Darkness are certainly here for. So revealing their plan a little bit further, getting the opportunity to see Carmeara's past relationship with Ultraman Trigger, all great buildups in regards to for this character and becoming even more fascinating for me. So I am interested in the direction that they certainly go with her. I am curious though, if she's blinded by love, by the idea of allowing Trigger to be the first one to sort of gain the power of the Eternity Core, right? Like we have Hoodrum that wants to be the first, but she stops him and allows Trigger to go ahead and do that. And I do wonder if this will in fact sort of be the big mistake that really causes the downfall of the Giants of Darkness, because there's a part of me that's kind of curious if, as Ultraman Trigger or Trigger Dark goes to touch the Eternity Core and we see Kengo activating his spark lens, I do wonder if maybe the Eternity Core powers maybe transfer through Trigger Dark and then into sort of the spark lens, therefore recreating Ultraman or Trigger into Ultraman Trigger, the Giant of Light as we know it. We kind of talked about that and speculated that maybe that's what it was last week when we were speculating as to maybe how Trigger Dark might have turned into this Giant of Light. I think this is the very moment in which we're starting to see it here from that moment 30 million years ago. So I am curious if this is sort of Carmeara's first big mistake to their downfall, unfortunately. But speaking of Trigger Dark, absolutely amazing outfit. Absolutely loved it. I even love the idea of like there being a gold patch on him, almost like it's a gold armor under his main armor that he already has. But I will say this, despite the fact that Trigger Dark did not really have any lines in here, I did think that the suit actor did a really great job in at least portraying some levels of hesitancy, maybe curiosity from Trigger Dark anytime that there were references to the light, right? Like his first encounter with Kengo, he sort of hesitates as Kengo showcases his abilities and his power with the light. I think being hit by that really causes, I mean, there's even a scene where Trigger literally looks at his hand, maybe kind of curious as to what that power is that he feels, maybe a little bit curious as to, if there is a side to Ultraman or Trigger Dark that's maybe unsure about his actions. Maybe his encounter with Kengo is certainly one that brings that to his attention. I mean, we even get the opportunity to see him hesitate for a second time when Yazari comments that perhaps the light is within them, talking to the Giants of Darkness. I think it's Ultraman Trigger that's really the only one that those words really struck with. Because even before he enters the Eternity Core, he's the last person to enter, and he hesitates before he even walks in there as well. So this is like the second time that somebody has referenced to Trigger, you are the light. There might be light within inside of you, sort of thing. And maybe it does have Trigger Dark thinking about some things as he enters the Eternity Core. And so I do think that this is going to be a great confrontation between Kengo and Trigger, now that we see Kengo sort of thrusted back into that sort of mind space, if you will, of Trigger. It looks as though it's like two minds or two bodies in one mind, almost like now they have to face off against each other. The winner gets the body, you know what I'm saying? Like, gets ownership of the body. It's what it definitely feels like to me, to certainly say the least. But I love the hesitancy, and I love some of the doubt that they're kind of putting within Trigger's mind here. And so the idea of him maybe eventually turning to the light side doesn't seem so out of nowhere, if you know what I mean. So I absolutely love what we wind up getting here with the Giants of Darkness in general. But, the Kengo and Yazari stuff in here really, really worked for me. Getting an opportunity to see Kengo thrusted into the past and winds up getting his first encounter with Yazari personally and Trigger Dark. Now, she does mention that there was a team of humans, a terrain protection team. So it's kind of cool, the idea that even 30 million years ago, there was a human force that at least tried to stop the Giants of Darkness, probably nowhere near as close to equipped as our humans now today. I mean, who knows? They look like they were pretty powerful, especially with the power that Yazari was certainly carrying around. But I do love the mention of the terrain protection team in here, that unfortunately they too have fallen. But it is kind of cool to see a team 30 million years ago and a current one to today that's still fighting for the power of light. And it's one of those things too where it's been a minute since Kengo has even said the smiley sort of catchphrase, and I know that probably makes people like cringe or roll their eyes sort of thing, but the fact that we haven't had him utilize it in quite some time, I thought the fact that he brought it back for this particular context alone was rather fitting, especially when you're talking to somebody like Yazari. Clearly wants to go ahead and show her that there is certainly hope out there, that there certainly is light, especially in him, to certainly go ahead and get the job done. So, those moments where we see Yazari in the past episodes here of Ultraman Trigger, where she says things like, you are light, and I'm assuming that and was eventually to finish off with darkness, to highlight the fact that, maybe you were born of darkness, but now you're full of light, maybe talking about Trigger. The idea of him, or at least Yazari talking to Kengo, mentioning the idea that you are in fact the light, compared to maybe what's going on with Trigger, right? Like maybe Kengo is the reason as to why Trigger Dark is the giant of light that he is today. And maybe once you take Kengo out of the equation, then it really throws off that balance and the darkness sort of arises again, right? So Kengo really could be sort of that trump card that the light really needs in order to kind of bring hope. If Kengo can certainly survive and continue to dominate the mind of Trigger in here, then we maybe will continue to have a giant of light on our side in Ultraman Trigger. But again, there is something really fantastic about sort of this full circle mindset in regards to the story that we're getting. Really seeing Kengo's impact 30 million years ago. Again, seeing him handling the Sparklets, Yazari referencing the idea of him being a light and being a hope that humanity certainly needs. And then seeing what Trigger used to be and what he is now, it definitely does showcase how big of a role I think that Kengo certainly is looking to play. Now, really quick side mention going forward, while I haven't seen the preview of next week's episode, this past weekend on APlus Morphinominal, we did talk about Ultraman Trigger getting a new form, which I'm assuming is going to be debuting next week in the Glitter Trigger something. I don't remember what they call it, but I am looking forward to seeing how Kengo maybe overcomes this and we get a new form of Ultraman Trigger at the end of the day. I will say this quick honorable mention. I thought the action in here was relatively good. The first fight sequence, we didn't get too much of battling with one another, but just seeing the destruction that Trigger winds up causing towards the end, right? Like the Gut Select team just being completely out of it, not sure what to do, seeing as though their hero has officially sort of turned on them a little bit. I am going to be eager to see how they handle that, but the special effects in here I thought was brilliant to say the least, whether that be Yuzari saving people's lives, Trigger using his blast to try and kill Kengo back in the past and things like that, and then of course a quick honorable mention to the music that really went along fantastically well with this. If there is any one side mention that I will talk about here, it's the idea that Akito kind of gives up Kengo's identity at the end of the episode, clearly worried about his friend after seeing what happened to Ultraman Trigger, the weird like empty body of Trigger that comes up off the floor and then transforms into Trigger Dark. And really just seeing the despair in Akito, the fact that he screams out Kengo's name, Yuna definitely picked up on it, or is going to be at least curious as to why he referenced Kengo at the end of the day. So I'm assuming, if anything, this is where the reveal comes for Akito letting Yuna in on that particular secret also a little bit. But I am interested to see how this battle between Kengo and Trigger is certainly going to go. And I definitely need to see another flashback sequence. Like I personally got to see if Trigger does in fact turn into Ultraman Trigger based off of maybe the light going through him or him absorbing that power same time as the spark lens is activated. I have no idea, man, but this time loop, this going back in the past and like creating that moment that will eventually lead to present day and it all coming full circle. Brilliant storytelling, guys. Brilliant stuff. So listen, again, these are just simply my A+ opinions. I was eating up this week's episode, but at the end of the day, I want to know yours. What did you guys think about this particular episode of Ultraman Trigger? Let your thoughts be known in the live chat or the comment section box below. And again, if there's any character details, specific moments, storyline concepts that I might have missed or didn't talk about in here that you want to further explore, please go ahead and let your thoughts be known in the comment section after this particular video airs, and we'll certainly go ahead and continue this discussion until next week's episode. Now, real quick, I did see some mentions from people in the comments about me maybe possibly reviewing this Ultraman, like this Ultra crossover event that we wind up having. I think that Subaraya Productions wind up dropping over on their YouTube page. I did download it to go ahead and check it out for myself, but again, gigantic disclaimer, because of the fact that this is truly my first Ultraman series of dabbling in the franchise at all. It is a little intimidating just seeing the trailers and stuff of all these other Ultraman and characters, because I have absolutely no idea who the F any of these people are. And so, you know, I there's a part of me that wants to watch it and review it. I probably will watch it regardless, but I don't want to give you guys a lackluster or half-assed review because of the fact that I don't know who these people are. And the last thing that I want is people in my comments saying, "Oh, you're a fucking idiot, Adam. How do you not know who these people?" I'm just putting out a disclaimer. I don't know if I need to know those characters going into that crossover. It probably significantly helps, but based off of my lack of Ultraman experience, do you guys still want me to try and tackle it? I will watch it. If I feel completely lost and have no idea where to begin, I'll be honest with you guys, but if that is something that you guys want to see me tackle, definitely go ahead and continue to let me know, and we'll see what we can do around here. But other than that, guys, we definitely will be back next weekend with a brand new Ultraman Trigger review, so certainly stay tuned till then, and until then, do me a big favor, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and as always, keep it A+. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.